Welcome to the College Football X with your hosts, John Nelson and John Wilkerson.
We have reached the quarterfinal stage of the college football playoff, and this is where it gets really fun because now we go from campus sites to neutral sites, and we'll see how it plays out in the college football playoff. And I'm sure all eyes, or most eyes, will be on Pasadena at the Rose Bowl, where number one Oregon takes on Ohio State. And with us is Paul Keels, the voice of the Ohio State Buckeyes. And Paul, I guess you got a nice trip to the West Coast ahead for you.
And glad to see that Ohio State's still playing, and the Rose Bowl is such a great historic site. So look forward to that.
Now, I want to go back to the Tennessee game. Late December, a college football playoff in the Horseshoe. It was an SEC Big Ten matchup. Of course, the Buckeyes dominated the game over the Vols. How would you describe that night? Is it as close to college football nirvana as you've seen in that place?
I think it was quite a display. First off, hats off to the Tennessee fans. So many of them that traveled to Columbus. You could see them around town all weekend. Probably about 30, maybe a little more than 30% of the stadium had orange in it. But then once the game started or close to starting, all of the Ohio State fans came in. So the scarlet and gray kind of muted out a little bit the orange, but it was a great atmosphere. A night game always has a little extra sizzle to it. It was pretty darn cold too, especially for those who are sitting out in the stands. But I think that's probably what the College Football Playoff Committee had in mind when they decided to have home games at these campus sites.
Would you like to see the home games continue?
I would. I think it's a great thing to have. It's an opportunity for the home fans, and in Ohio State's case, to see a team that they don't normally get to see in Tennessee. The same with, Penn State, SMU, all of the others. So hopefully so.
Of course, now you move on to Pasadena and the Rose Bowl for Ohio State and Oregon. And, of course, we saw this game back in last October, a classic football game. Ohio State fans may have a different feel for that since they lost, but it was still a classic football game. Now we get the sequel. And how has Ohio State evolved as a team since that game back in October?
Well, I think what you've seen, John, first off, is their improvement on defense. That was, as far as points yielded, that was their worst defensive game of the year. Oregon was able to capitalize with a number of big plays. And I think you also saw there in one in particular instance, a special teams gaffe. It was an onside kick that Oregon was able to recover. But defensively, Ohio State has performed much better. Now, you can also say they've not seen an offense like what Oregon produces. And you've also seen them be a little more efficient on offense as well. But Oregon has continued to improve their play as well. So that's going to be the interesting part of this matchup.
There's some talk about how Oregon hasn't played a game in a month and well rested. Ohio State, of course, had that playoff game. But then again, Ohio State, and you were there, you saw the momentum generated from that Tennessee game. Do you kind of like the position Ohio State's in heading into this game?
Yeah, without question. When Oregon played more recently than Ohio State from the end of the regular season, we're playing in the Big Ten championship game. But certainly Ohio State generated some great momentum, got off to a quick start, which is something they haven't always done. So to see them be able to explode out of the gate with 21 points in the first quarter and really be able to do the things defensively to hamper Tennessee, a great deal of momentum for this Ohio State team going into this game.
We're talking with Paul Keels, the voice of the Ohio State Buckeyes. And, of course, during the holiday season, you're doing homework. You also got men's basketball games to call, but you're doing your homework for this Oregon game in Pasadena. So as you're preparing for your broadcast, and is there much difference from the charts and the notes that you wrote back in October for this meeting?
A lot of it's just updating stats and transferring things from the chart from that game to the chart for this coming game. And, looking at some of the things that Dylan Gabriel has done, continuing an outstanding season and an outstanding career. Going into looking at, some of the updated stats for Ohio State. TreVeyon Henderson is now in the top 5 in Ohio State rushing history. And you think about some of the great running backs that have been there. That's quite an achievement for a guy over his career. So the names really haven't changed an awful lot, save maybe Ohio State's offensive line. They suffered a significant injury. Josh Simmons, their left tackle, was injured in the Oregon game and lost for the year. They've suffered a couple of other injuries on the offensive line that have prompted some position shifting. But the names are pretty much the same, John.
So do you expect a similar type game we saw back in October, or will the neutral site have a little bit of an effect on that?
That'll be the interesting part to see because the atmosphere in Eugene was phenomenal. And there are people who travel with Ohio State that say they think that that atmosphere was better than any other the places they go to, like Penn State. So you never know for sure. Ohio State fans are known to travel very well. Oregon doesn't have to travel as far, so you figure they're going to have a lot of fans there. From an Ohio State standpoint, you hope that it's not that high scoring a game. You hope their defense is able to cut down some of the Oregon offensive opportunities, but certainly these teams both have offensive weapons that could lead you to seeing a game that would resemble that as far as point total.
From the fan standpoint and from your standpoint, you're looking forward to going to Pasadena.
It's such a historic place and such a great setting. The Rose Bowl Stadium, and we've had a chance to be there a few times, both for bowl games and for regular season games. Ironically, Ohio State went there. Their first regular season game after 9/11 was a UCLA home game. So it's always a great thing to see that setting, to see when the sun goes down and the mountains kind of have that purple tint to them, but also to see the fans that are represented. The last time Ohio State went there, Utah was the opponent. It was the first time Utah had ever been in the Rose Bowl. So their fans showed up and represented accordingly. And, even though it's no longer what a lot of us grew up with the Big Ten and the Pac-10 champions meeting there on New Year's Day, with all of the different changes in college football, it's still the Rose Bowl, and it still has a lot of appeal to those longtime Ohio State and Big Ten fans.
Well, you still kind of have that Big Ten, Pac-12 kind of feel with these two teams playing, although they're conference rivals now. How do you see this series evolving in the Big Ten? Because, look, I know Ohio State, Michigan is up here nationally even as well, but could this series kind of inch up there and become that mid-season rivalry that everybody points to in the Big Ten?
Well, I'm not so sure, only because they're not going to play on a regular basis. They won't play next year. They'll play the following year in Columbus. They've seen one another. I think there's others. Certainly for a while there, we saw the Ohio State-Wisconsin series when both those teams are playing at a high level really hold a lot of steam. The Michigan series is going to be something all by itself. That's one of the downsides, John, to the expanding of these conferences. It's kind of hard to think that, but also if these two programs continue to have the success at the level they're having, then that can kind of create a little bit. And I think a lot of it has to do also when they meet in the schedule. Is it late in the season? Is it early in the season? We've seen the Big Ten in recent years match some teams in the opening weekend of the season and, late August, early September. So, but certainly when Ohio State and Oregon have met recently, they've big impact games.
Yeah, but they could meet in the title game. There's always that possibility. So, we're hoping for that. Our office HQ is in Metro Atlanta. And so whenever Nick Saban opens his mouth in the Southern football culture, everybody kind of leans and listens. And he made some news talking about Ohio State fans and their psychotic obsession with Michigan. It kind of pegged the shock meter a little bit for college football fans. How did it play in Columbus?
Well, not only his comments, but some of the ones that Kirk Herbstreit made. And, you have to, first off, John, both Nick Saban and Kirk Herbstreit have ties to Ohio State. Nick was an assistant coach here many years ago. So, there's some familiarity with their backgrounds, but, it all involves the fact that Ohio State's lost 4 years in a row to Michigan. And that's created a lot of angst. Out of all of the great success that Ryan Day has had, he's 1-4 against Michigan. And now prior to that, Ohio State had beaten Michigan 8 straight times. Many of us remember when the Big Ten title in a Rose Bowl trip was decided on the Ohio State-Michigan game. This is kind of a whole new world because, our radio station here in Columbus and some of the things we did with some of the fans, you can ask people, would you much rather see Ohio State lose to Michigan and win a national championship? Because it's possible. And it was surprising how many people still wanted to see a win over Michigan, regardless of what the cost is. So it's just something that creates a lot of angst. I think there's a loud group that, is not happy with Ryan Day's lack of success against Michigan. I think there's a stronger group that understands the big picture of what he's brought to this program. So anything doing with the Ohio State Michigan is always going to strike a nerve, good or bad.
We're talking with Paul Keels, the voice of the Ohio State Buckeyes. And one of my co-hosts, Martin Drzengo, is a passionate Ohio State Buckeye fan. He's a native of Youngstown, Ohio. In fact, when he cuts himself shaving and the blood comes out scarlet and gray. But he always, syncs your audio with the broadcast. And how does that make you feel when fans like Marty and Brother Marty, and other Ohio State fans, sync your audio to the NBC, CBS, or Fox broadcast to enjoy the game.
Well, that's very flattering, and we always appreciate that. And one of the things, John, that we've learned over the years, there's not a lot of people that can always be sitting in front of the TV and watching the games. We get a lot of input from the farmers that are out working on Saturdays, the folks that are taking their kids to and from games, the people that have to work on Saturdays. So it's very flattering. And, as sports fans, we understand that. People have an affection for those announcers that see their favorite team each and every game. I'm kind of that way. My lifelong team is the Cincinnati Reds and the Cincinnati Bengals, being from Cincinnati. So I understand that is very flattering. We appreciate it. And, the other thing the other very flattering remarks we get sometimes, and just got an email this past week from a Tennessee fan, folks who appreciate what we do, even though they are fans of the opposing team. So we always try to, and our producer, Skip Mossig, has done a great job of reminding us that everybody that listens isn't always a passionate Ohio State fan. So we've got to do what we can to make sure people are familiar who's playing on what team and all of that. But it's very flattering when people take the effort to sync up our audio with the TV.
Well, now that I know you're a Reds fan, when you saw the birds on the bat behind me, I'm sure the hair on your neck kind of stood up a little bit.
Oh, no, we're envious of the Cardinals tradition, but that National League Central's got some great traditions and some great teams. We just wish the Reds would be a little more competitive here.
And I wish the Cardinals would be too. Maybe they'll meet someday and be better. Paul Keels, the voice of the Ohio State Buckeyes, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. Here's a chance for you to shamelessly plug some of the things you're doing. The floor is yours.
Well, this is probably the biggest thing we've got going on right now, this matchup, and we're hoping that it continues for Ohio State, as well as basketball. They're coming off a big win. They upset fourth-ranked Kentucky last week in New York. They are getting ready for a game with Indiana State this weekend. So those that are Ohio State fans all over, and we know they're all over. We've even been in Maui for the basketball tournament and see them show up out there. You can always check out our broadcasts. Even in the postseason when the networks take over, the Varsity app is a great place where you can find our broadcasts.
Paul Keels, the voice of the Ohio State Buckeyes. Thank you for your time and joining us here on the College Football X.
My pleasure. Glad to do it, John.
The online sports guys would love to hear from you. Go to our X page, formerly known as Twitter, at OSG Sports for a comment, rant, or just whatever is on your mind about college football. Now back to the College Football X. Here's John Wilkerson.
Now we turn our attention to the Peach Bowl in Atlanta on Wednesday afternoon as the Texas Longhorns host the Arizona State Sun Devils, and a returning guest, Hod Rabino from the publisher of DevilsDigest.com, joins us. Great seeing you again, Hod, and you're coming to Office HQ here in Atlanta.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to the trip. I mean, it won't be my first time in Atlanta, but first time that I am coming for college football playoff purposes. So definitely an exciting time for everybody involved with Arizona State.
So as you come into the game on Wednesday, would it be fair to say that Arizona State's kind of playing with house money right now after what they've done this year?
100%, John. That's actually the same term that I used on a previous podcast earlier today. I feel that, and the narrative is pretty much worn out at this point, but just for the sake of people that aren't maybe familiar with the Arizona State story, when the media preseason poll came out for the Big 12, out of a 16-team league, Arizona State was picked dead last. Now, on the one hand, you can say, okay, they were coming off back-to-back 3-9 seasons. Expectations were pretty low. I think it still caught some people by surprise of how little the Big 12 media did think of Arizona State, even though it's obviously his first year as part of the conference. But I feel that ever since they gained bowl eligibility and won that 6th game, they've absolutely been playing with house money. Because I think at a minimum, if Arizona State wanted to defy expectations, they wanted to at least reach that milestone. But when I say milestone, I use that word very carefully because I really think that head coach Kenny Dillingham, the players, never really wanted to set a limit to how much this team can accomplish. So I would say that going back to the 6th win of the season, yeah, it's probably been house money ever since. And I think just like everybody else, I've been very, very impressed with what Arizona State has been able to achieve. They entered a month of November playing 5 games, which is really a rarity, even in college football. A few of those games were on the road, and Arizona State ends up that slate being undefeated, and then going to the Big 12 championship game against Iowa State and putting an absolute show especially there in the second half. So it's not so much ASU reaching the current 11-2 mark, but I think the way that they've been doing it has been very impressive.
Well, you had to be impressed with the fact that they got the bye into the quarterfinals with all the year they've been having. And I'm sure that impressive win over Iowa State, who, by the way, won the Pop-Tarts Bowl, helped a bit in getting that bye.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a two-sided answer here. Look, I mean, if I'm being honest, I know that the Big 12 championship, capturing that crown was not enough in a vacuum, because ASU did need a 56-yard field goal as time expired by Clemson over SMU to secure that spot. And I'll take it a step further, and I've been pretty vocal about it in social media when it did happen, that I think Arizona State really should have been ranked number 3 over Boise State, because that would allow ASU to play literally in their backyard in the Fiesta Bowl. But I also thought that Arizona State's 11-2 record was more impressive than Boise State's 12-1 record. As it turns out, the playoff committee has been enamored with Boise State for several weeks now. So I guess Boise State would have to lose their Mountain West championship game against Nevada for ASU to leapfrog them. But it is what it is. And I think that Arizona State, just adding to this quote-unquote Cinderella story, also getting a first-round bye, something that helped them very much, I think, with the transfer portal, because they weren't worried about preparing for a game. They were able to add some of the pieces that they felt were necessary for the 2025 season. So that was huge. Resting after a long season definitely does not hurt your chances in your next game when you're able to physically and mentally recover. So yes, definitely a lot of positives with that first round bye, but I'm also aware of the fact that some lady luck was involved in that process.
Well, back to the Peach Bowl game, and I think we got a really impressive quarterback matchup between Quinn Ewers of Texas, and we know what his body of work is, against Sam Leavitt. And of course, recently Sam Leavitt had some quotes about Ewers, and I'm paraphrasing here. He's excited about the opportunity, and he's going to go out and prove why he's the better quarterback. How is that playing back in Tempe and in the football facility back there at ASU?
I think Arizona State has done a good job walking that fine line between confidence and cockiness. Now, I understand that people outside of Tempe might view it as pure, flat out pure cockiness, and maybe not take too kind to those words. But I also think that that's really just a testament of Sam Leavitt's belief in himself, his teammates' belief in him. So for him to project that persona, if you will, I don't think really should be taken in any other context, but a player that is just confident in his abilities, confident in his teammates' abilities. When I'm looking at this game, and when you talk about the battle of the quarterbacks, I'm not here to tell you that Sam Leavitt has a clear advantage over Quinn Ewers, but I would say at the same time, and this is talking to Texas insiders and reading and hearing what some other insiders had to say, Quinn Ewers has had a roller coaster of a season, and to his, to his credit, for lack of a better term, I mean, he was battling 2 different injuries for a good portion of the season. But I also think that there's something to be said about going into the season expecting a Texas offense where the passing game would really be the focal point over the running game. And I think as the season went on, and again, the various injuries to Ewers have definitely contributed to that, we kind of seen a reversal of roles. So I think that, the passing game of Texas, I don't know if it's really coming into this game really on a high note. I mean, sure, when you rush the ball for 292 yards against Clemson in the first round of the playoffs, really doesn't matter a whole lot what the passing game did or did not do that evening. But nonetheless, I think that when it comes to the passing game matchups, I don't know if Texas really has an advantage that manifests itself in the current 13.5 point favorite that they are. So maybe that enters some of the psyche of a guy like Sam Leavitt when he makes that statement. But again, I just think it's just a young quarterback that is really confident in himself and knows that he just cannot just roll out of bed with the rest of his teammates half an hour before the game and expect to go out there and throw for 400 yards against a very, very good Texas pass defense, one that, by the way, has the current Jim Thorpe Award winner.
Exactly. And of course, that defense and the nation will get to see Cam Scadaboo again. And this will probably be a little bit more of a significant game for Scadaboo because he's going up against an elite SEC defense. And so, how do you expect Scadaboo will be used against Texas?
I think that they're really going to really expose his maybe not really expose his versatility, but they showcase his versatility. And I thought the head coach Steve Sarkisian said it best. That you look at the impressive numbers of Cam Scadaboo, and it's easy maybe to have that preconceived notion he's just a battering ram that just runs whenever, however, over opponents. But Sarkisian, I thought, did a good job of really highlighting Scadaboo's versatility in the open field, his versatility as a receiver out of the backfield. Mm-hmm. So I think that it really, I think the offense for ASU knows that Scadaboo cannot be a one-trick pony by any means. But then again, I don't think that really was the approach, even when ASU faced run defenses, that are much less of a caliber compared to Texas, which, to your point, Joan, I agree. I think that Texas does present quite a challenge for Cam Scadaboo and the ground attack. And win or lose on Wednesday, I won't be surprised if there'll be 1 or 2 or 3 series where ASU absolutely can't get anything done on the ground just because they're hitting a wall, pun intended. That is the Longhorn run defense. So I think with Scadaboo, it's really going to be a matter of using him in as many ways as possible. Also making sure not to wear him down too much, and their ASU is obviously hoping that their backup running backs, no matter how many snaps they're going to get on Wednesday afternoon, that they can also carry the load in whatever capacity they're expected to do. I expect ASU to be creative. I don't expect them to reinvent the wheel, but when you talk about the benefits of having that first round bye, it's not only just the resting, but also maybe entering some new plays into the playbook that have not been shown on film, and see how Texas can really contend with that approach.
And I've watched a lot of Texas games this year, and I don't think they've faced a type of running back like Scadaboo, a guy that really it's hard to get your hands on him and grab him simply because there's no place to really grab with him. He's the way he's physically built. And if you do square up against him on defense, he's got those powerful legs and those powerful shoulders, and he'll just bulldoze you. And the few times I've been able to watch Scadaboo play, I've seen a few times where even guys that are physically bigger than him, he's been able to gain the advantage there. That is something I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, and I'll take it a step further. I mean, look, I'm not in any illusion that when Texas played the SEC slate, that each and every running back that they played was 2, 3, 4 degrees worse than Scadaboo. I'm not even implying that at all. But, at the same time, you look at a team like Clemson, which really didn't present any of a ground attack challenge to Texas. And again, Texas is more than capable of stopping the run. So I hope nobody construes this in any way different. But I almost feel that maybe Clemson, not that they really cared, but maybe did a disservice for Texas, not really preparing them for Cam Scadaboo, because they abandoned that run probably a little earlier than they should have. And who knows, what would happen if they would have a different approach over there with the Tigers and their running attack on that evening. But I definitely think, to your point, John, that Scadaboo does present challenges because, again, he's not just a one-trick pony, just that battering ram that loves just sticking his helmet in the chest of defenders. He is somebody that really can hurt you in several different ways. And I think ASU showcased some of that already on film. And I think they might have, some other tricks up their sleeves with Scadaboo. But again, I don't think anybody in Tempe is thinking that is going to be a walk in the park. I mean, Texas in every facet, every offensive element you can think about, every defensive element you can think about is just head and shoulders better than any team that Arizona State played in the Big 12 conference.
We're talking to Hod Rabino, the publisher of DevilsDigest.com, as we talk about the Peach Bowl between Arizona State and Texas. And to go along while we're talking about the Arizona State offense, look, I think ASU's defense is pretty stout, what I've seen from them this year. And yes, they'll be challenged by Texas because they've got a number of offensive weapons. And not only that, a big offensive and athletic offensive line and depth. So is the best defense for ASU the offense keeping sustained drives going?
That's an excellent point. And I'm sure if I mentioned that the last time I was with you on this podcast, but I think that ASU going into their first year in the Big 12, they knew that there's a lot of the quote unquote keep away ball approach that Big 12 teams do take. And that's why I think Big 12, maybe compared to the other power conference teams, is one of those leagues where you have a lot of unexpected scores, a lot of close scores in comparison to the SEC, ACC, and the Big Ten. And I think part of it is if you are able to really dominate the time of possession, and obviously the new rules that came into place this year where the clock does not stop after every first down unless it's the last 2 minutes of the half, is something that, on the one hand, it's obviously an even playing field. All teams are playing by the same rules. But I think with Arizona State, especially with Cam Skadoo, that has helped them so much just win the time of possession seemingly each and every week. I mean, the one example that I point to that still blows my mind away, that Kansas State, a team that plays very, very well at home, had the ball in the second half game, which was a loss to Arizona State in Manhattan, for only 10 minutes. 10 minutes in the second half. Game is in your backyard, and you can only hold on to the ball for 10 out of 30 minutes of the second half. That tells you how effective ASU has been. Now, to be fair, I think by default, Texas, not really having that keep away ball mentality that ASU has, but obviously with their running game, the way they performed against Clemson, I don't see them being conservative with the running game and putting more of an onus on the passing game. So the time possession battle is going to be that much tougher against Texas, because that's a team that in its own right can just move the chains. And I don't think it's only their passing game, but their running game and the impressive performance they're coming off can really achieve that. But yes, I think that the defense is definitely going to need the offense to win that time of possession battle and really have those long sustained drives. And even if that drive ends with a field goal rather than a touchdown, as long as they're not giving a very capable Texas offense a short field to work with, that's something that can help the Sun Devils quite a bit on New Year's Day.
Well, one thing, Hod, as well as I do, the ASU fan base is electrified over this team and what they've accomplished this year. And I'm sure any alums in the metro Atlanta area or in the Southeast are going to make a pilgrimage to Atlanta, as well as many of the fans in Tempe. So when I drive down to downtown Atlanta on Tuesday or Wednesday, how many Sun Devil fans am I going to see mobbing the World Congress Center, Mercedes-Benz, any place downtown in Atlanta?
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously it's going to be a longer trip compared to the University of Texas. So, to say that it's going to be a five-figure fan support for ASU, that might be really pushing it a little too much. But I think it's realistic that you would see between 5,000 and 7,000 ASU fans in attendance. I know a lot of them know that this might be a once in a lifetime opportunity, and like you said, the excitement and the support for ASU has only been building a lot throughout the last several weeks. But if I saw I would say about a 5,000 fan base support in Arlington, Texas, which obviously is a much shorter trip for ASU fans than Atlanta is, then I think realistically, having between 5,000 and 7,500 is probably what you can expect from the ASU fan base. They'll make their presence mattered, because I know they're probably going to be outnumbered quite a bit by the Texas fans. But they're just hoping that their team gives us something to cheer for on Wednesday, and maybe that 7,500 sounds like 15,000 if the game is going according to the wishes that afternoon.
Well, one thing you'll find out when you go to the Mercedes-Benz and the Peach Bowl, it's a bowl that's supported quite well in Atlanta and in North Georgia. And I have a feeling that many of those fans that have bought the tickets that have no ties to any school, and there are going to be several thousand of them, are going to be swaying toward Arizona State, because Texas has played Georgia twice. And I think the fan base is probably more Although maybe there's the SEC tie-in. I don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's more ASU fans making noise than you think.
Yeah, I mean, you asked me specific about fans that are born and raised as Sun Devil fans, but to your point, yeah, there's obviously not a whole lot of love between Georgia and Texas, even though 2024 was the first year that both of them were pitted in the same conference. One sentence I've been hearing a lot, and just in the last week or two, that Georgia is Texas's kryptonite. So now we'll see on Wednesday if the state of Georgia is truly Texas kryptonite, or rather than just being the Bulldogs. But yeah, I think that it's definitely going to be just a little more fun for Georgia fans and just people in the greater Atlanta area that may be casual Georgia fans to see Texas on Wednesday. That's definitely an excellent point. So maybe that fan base of 5 to 7,500 Sun Devil fans get quite the boost on Wednesday by default, just because some fans out there in Georgia just don't like Texas, and they beat them twice and would like to see them just eliminated from the playoffs, because maybe in the back of their mind, John, they're knowing that to try to beat a team 3 times in a year, that might be a little tough.
It just might be a little tough. And for the ASU fans that are making the pilgrimage, make some time to go to the College Football Hall of Fame. Yep. Go to the varsity. It's what you do when you come to Atlanta before a big college football game, or in this case, with the 1 o'clock local time kick. Go to the Waffle House. That's kind of tradition around here, Hod.
Yeah, absolutely. I did visit varsity in, I believe it was 2009 when ASU played at Georgia. A game that was way closer than I thought it would be, but the Bulldogs did come on top. And yeah, Atlanta is definitely a great city to visit and hang out at. I feel like when ASU played in Arlington, Texas is so spread out that it just really depends like which part of the Dallas metropolitan area you're at. To really call it a fun trip. But Atlanta, you just have to look at the map and the stadium and the College Football Hall of Fame and the team hotel and the different events going to take place. I think it's like maybe a 3-mile radius, and that might be exaggerating. So it's definitely one of those trips where you can even maybe save your Uber card and Uber app for other times and just walk if the weather is going to be nice. But I think it's going to be a great time for Arizona State fans over there prior to the game. Fans obviously are hoping that the same vibe is going to exist during and after that contest.
He's Hod Rabino, the publisher of DevilsDigest.com. And Hod, we appreciate you coming back on our College Football X podcast.
Thanks, John.